Hi there, friends. My name is Matthew Saunders, and this is the third in a series of short videos and social media posts about neurodivergence called My Neurodivergent Brain. This episode is called Anger, and I'm going to explore with you, from the time I was 3 or so, how anger has influenced my life and how I have harnessed that anger to change the way I behave around other people. I'd love for you to subscribe to my YouTube channel and follow me on Twitter. You can see both of those in the slide on the screen right now. And if you missed either of the first two casts, you can also just use the YouTube channel QR code down below to get to a list of the current episodes. So thanks very much, and I hope you enjoy this episode. When I was 3, I had a little red tricycle that I adored, and I would beg my parents to put me up on the saddle. Once I was sitting on the trike, I would just sit on it, and I would scream. My parents couldn't figure out why I would just sit there and holler at the top of my lungs. It took me over a year to learn how to ride it. Now, in 1977, I was identified educationally as a high-risk child due to delays in eye-hand coordination, spatial relations, motor skills, and visual memory. And this is the reason I would sit and scream. I couldn't figure out how to make my legs turn the front wheels. Now, the point to this is that people on the spectrum can anger quickly and can have difficulty calming themselves. We need to learn skills to cope with an increase in irritability. But first, we must be able to identify these emotions. Dr. Kelly Blankenship and Dr. Noha Minashawi of the National Library of Medicine wrote, individuals with high-functioning autism spectrum disorders also exhibit difficulty modulating their anger, which may lead to further difficulties in their social interactions because they have difficulty interpreting their own subtle changes in emotion. They are often only able to describe emotional extremes. I simply couldn't express my frustration in a normal way. This led to extreme outbursts. My emotions either seemed elated or they seemed extremely angry, and there didn't seem to be much in between. This would continue well into my teenage years, and I had very few friends because they just couldn't identify with me. As a young boy, I would often get into verbal and sometimes physical altercations with my peers, despite being very small for my age. And I would become enraged if I felt that I was being wronged or insulted. And children are cruel. So rather than try to help me calm down, they found it funny to wind me up until I was a complete mess. In grades 7 and 8, in an attempt to sort out my learning difficulties, but also to cater to my intelligence, I ended up being enrolled in both the gifted and remedial programs at the same time. And this meant that I didn't fit in anywhere. I didn't fit in with the gifted kids because I was in the remedial program. And the remedial program kids didn't want to have anything to do with me because I was in the gifted program. And I didn't have anything in common with kids in the regular classes. So for me, it was an extremely lonely time that ran all the way through high school. This had social impacts of its own that didn't really resolve until university. However, it saved me from being relegated solely to the remedial program, and I believe this strategy quite likely saved me from being on a life of being dependent on others. But as I got older, I was baffled at how people reacted to me. I wanted to figure out why I had trouble making and keeping friends. And what worked for me ultimately was in-the-moment journaling. When I found myself feeling angry or sad or excited or happy, I would stop and I would take a deep breath, center myself, and identify where those emotions were coming from. I kept a small notebook with me, and I would journal in the moment. I needed to start understanding cause and effect. I needed to pinpoint why I felt angry, happy, or sad. And in the last 2 years before going to university, I identified what self-destructive behaviors around other people actually started to look like. And I began short-circuiting them using reason rather than instinct. The social impact of being an experiment by mixing remedial and gifted programs was on its way to resolving itself when I attended university. Because when I arrived, nobody knew who I was. And I realized that I could completely reimagine myself without stigmas that had built up through middle and high school. At Bishop's University, I learned that you can identify and define your own identity. I learned that when you're redefining yourself, you can fake it until you make it. That exercise of writing down what I was feeling, when and why, allowed me to flourish both academically and socially during this time. People liked me, and perhaps it was for the first time in my life. I would note that these feelings of anger are nearly never directed personally to another person. And when they fade, that happens very quickly. I personally have no feelings of animosity towards the person that I might have seemed angry with. And this can be extremely confusing for other people because they don't understand how somebody can 180 so quickly. It can also be confusing for the neurodivergent person because they can't conceive of why people are still upset with them after they've let go of their irritability. To this day, my emotions are extreme, and I use a variety of self-soothing techniques to smooth things inwardly and outwardly. Sometimes this manifests as box breathing, or light tapping on opposite shoulders, or repetitive movements, sometimes using a fidget. So when you work with those on the spectrum, please consider their feelings can manifest differently than yours. They may feel deeply about things that you wouldn't expect. You may be surprised by what they feel so deeply about. Please avoid approaching this as overreaction, because that will simply make things more challenging. But none of this makes any of those feelings less valid or real. And personally, I found it totally fine if someone asks me, "Hey, what's up? What are you feeling? Why are you feeling that way?" And I'm happy to talk about these things as long as what I'm feeling isn't dismissed. So if you're in a long-term personal or professional relationship with somebody who's neurodivergent, learn what triggers are likely to lead to extremes. And you can help an awful lot just by understanding. Thank you for watching this episode. And the next episode that I'll drop is called Joy. And it's going to explore the same kind of things that anger did. Because folks in my situation feel joy just as quickly, just as deeply as they do anger. I hope you watch the next episode, and thanks very much.